has nothing to do with Islam. And what this police are doing.
Killing a lady because she
Yeah.
wasn't wearing the hijab
This has
properly,
nothing
that
to-
has nothing to do with Islam. We agree. Yeah, yeah.
Now, my question is, do the state, they have a right to impose this jilbab on women or not? So
Right.
that's my question.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, okay, before we look at it from the Islamic perspective, I want to look at it from the secular perspective. There's a reason why. The reason is because who are the main people objecting to all of this? They are secular people. Whether they're secular Iranians, whether they're secular Christians, atheists, it doesn't matter. But it's secular-minded people who are telling us that this religious dress, this hijab, this religious dress, why is the state imposing it? So one argument that I have, not that we are defending the Iranian regime, just like ladies who don't wear the hijab properly get shut down in Iran, you and I would get shut down in Iran too for doing this, for talking about Islam, for talking about Sunni Islam, or even just talking about Islam in general without the express approval of the government, of the Iranian regime, we would get shut down. This wouldn't happen. So we're not supporters of the Iranian regime. This has to be clear. But we have to be fair to everybody. We have to be fair. So the secular people who are objecting, they themselves would agree, they themselves would acknowledge that states and governments do have the right to impose a minimum clothing on people. So every country that you can think of, Canada, America, Britain, where all of these secular Iranians run to, where do they run to? America, to England, to Germany? Is there not a minimum dress that is imposed by the government?
There is.
Yeah, so now this sounds, of course, like an extreme example, but we have to give extreme examples to illustrate the point. If I strip down naked right now, if an Iranian stripped down naked in New York City, what will happen? They will be forced to cover up. At some point, they will be fined or they will be arrested, they will be warned, right? Because every city has its own version of morality police. Police are enforcing morality. They have their own version of morality and vice, police and whatnot. So by that standard, this would be my counter question to secular people, that if you are acknowledging that the government has a right to enforce some minimum clothing, how do you know what that minimum clothing is? Who said that it's just this? Why is it only the genitals? Why is it in many Western countries women cannot expose their breasts? Breasts are not part of the sexual anatomy per se. Breasts are something men have as well. Men have breasts, men have nipples. So I can take off my shirt and show my breasts. Why can't a woman do that? That's certainly not gender equal. That's certainly not gender neutral. So I don't know what good answer a secular person can give other than it depends on the customs of the land. It depends on the cultural sensitivities of the people in that society. By that standard, akhi, we can say, well, by the cultural sensitivities and by the cultural standards of Yemen, the Yemeni government should make sure that women are also covering their hair. By the cultural sensitivities of Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, well, then the government should enforce that level of clothing, even by secular standards. Even by secular standards. Okay, so I'll continue. Now, but as Muslims now, we want to know that does Allah give the right I know. But I wanted to clarify that first point too. Does Allah give an Islamic government the right to enforce that clothing? So in all honesty, I've made the disclaimer already. I'm no scholar, I'm no expert. But from the little bit that I've looked into this, I did not find anything very clear in the Quran or in the Hadith. I didn't find anything very clearly that would say that the Sultan or the Hakim can enforce this, if a lady doesn't do it. I was listening to a scholar the other day. That scholar said that throughout Islamic history, it was enforced, but on a micro level, not on the macro level. It didn't have to be done by the government because families, villages, societies, communities, they made sure that their daughters and their sisters dressed in a certain way. And in those societies, the women couldn't even imagine dressing in another way. Just like in London, no woman here, no matter how secular she is, no matter how liberal she is, how atheist she is, she can never dream of taking off all of her clothes. Unless she's crazy. She can never dream of stripping. But you know what I mean? 99.999% will never even think of taking off all of their clothes.
The culture.
Yes. So it's not really the British government that on a practical level has to enforce it. On a practical level, it's the social pressure, society, customs that ensure that women and men don't completely strip down naked, in England. Now, in case we do, then the police will step in, right? So historically, that's how it was done. But in the modern era, where families are breaking down, where there's migration, where there's, gentrification, people are moving around, you don't have traditional extended families and villages enforcing this anymore. So this